Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the life of one of America's most infamous criminals, but we're not just talking about the violence, the shootouts, or the gangster legend. We're following the money. Because Al Capone wasn't just a mobster. He was a businessman who built a criminal empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars in today's money. This is the financial story of Scarface. From his humble beginnings in Brooklyn to becoming one of the wealthiest criminals in American history. Alphonse Gabriel Capone was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents. His father, Gabriele, was a barber, and his mother, Teresa, was a seamstress. The Capone family lived in extreme poverty. Gabrielle earned approximately $3 to $4 per week cutting hair, that's roughly $75 to $100 per week in today's money. For a family of 9 children, this was barely survival. Young Al grew up in the Navy Street section of Brooklyn, one of the poorest neighborhoods in New York. He attended school until the 6th grade, when at age 14, he struck a teacher and was expelled. This was a turning point. Without education and with no legitimate career prospects, Capone began working odd jobs: a bowling alley pin boy, a candy store clerk, a cutter in a bookbindery. These jobs paid mere pennies. As a pin boy, he might have earned 50 cents for a 10-hour shift. About $12 today. But Capone was ambitious. He saw the real money flowing through the streets of Brooklyn, and it wasn't coming from legitimate business. It was coming from the gangs. In his teenage years, Capone fell in with the 5 Points Gang, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in New York City, led by Johnny Torrio. This is where Capone learned the business of crime, and make no mistake, it was a business. Working as a bouncer and bartender at the Harvard Inn, a Coney Island bar and brothel, Capone earned approximately $15 to $20 per week, about $300 to $400 in today's money. But the real income came from side operations, protection rackets, theft, and running numbers. A young enforcer in the 5 Points Gang could easily double or triple his legitimate income through these activities. It was at the Harvard Inn that Capone got the facial scars that earned him the nickname Scarface, a knife fight with a man named Frank Galluccio over an insult to Galluccio's sister. Capone would later claim the scars came from his service in World War I, but he never served. Image was everything in the gangster business. In 1918, Capone married May Coughlin, and they had a son, Albert Sonny Capone. With a family to support, the financial pressure intensified. The legitimate economy wasn't offering opportunities for an Italian immigrant with a 6th grade education and a criminal record. But Johnny Torrio saw potential in young Capone, and in 1919, he invited him to Chicago. When Al Capone arrived in Chicago in 1919, he started as a bouncer at the Four Deuces, a brothel operated by Torrio. His initial salary was approximately $25 per week, about $500 today. But Chicago in 1920 was about to become the epicenter of the most profitable illegal enterprise in American history, Prohibition. On January 17, 1920, Capone's 21st birthday, the 18th Amendment went into effect, making the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol illegal across the United States. This created an instant black market worth billions. Johnny Torrio immediately recognized the opportunity and began organizing the bootlegging operations in Chicago. Capone was his right-hand man. Within months, Capone was earning approximately $50,000 per year, that's roughly $800,000 in today's money. By 1921, he was managing several brothels and gambling houses, taking a cut from each operation. The Four Deuces alone was generating an estimated $300,000 annually, with Capone taking a 10% management fee, $30,000 per year just from one establishment. Torrio taught Capone the importance of political corruption. They paid Chicago Mayor William Hale Thompson's political machine approximately $30,000 in 1922. Nearly $600,000 today, to ensure police wouldn't interfere with their operations. This wasn't bribery, this was business overhead. And it was incredibly effective. By 1923, Capone had expanded operations to Cicero, a suburb of Chicago. The outfit, as the organization was known, controlled hundreds of speakeasies, gambling houses, and brothels across the Chicago area. Let's break down the revenue streams. Bootlegging operations, this was the crown jewel. Capone's organization smuggled alcohol from Canada and produced illegal beer and spirits in secret breweries. By 1925, the outfit controlled over 10,000 speakeasies in Chicago alone. A typical speakeasy paid the outfit between $50 to $100 per week for protection and alcohol supply. That's $100,000 to $200,000 per week just from speakeasy operations, $2 to $4 million per week in today's money. The outfit operated 7 breweries in the Chicago area, each producing approximately 100 barrels of beer per day. A barrel sold for $55, about $1,100 today. That's $5,500 per brewery per day, or $38,500 daily from all 7 breweries. That's nearly $15 million annually from brewing operations alone. In today's money, that's approximately $300 million per year. Gambling operations, Capone controlled dozens of gambling houses, from elegant casinos serving wealthy patrons to backroom craps games in working-class neighborhoods. A single large casino could generate $20,000 to $30,000 per night in revenue. The outfit's cut was typically 20%, yielding $4,000 to $6,000 per establishment per night. With multiple operations running, gambling generated approximately $1 million annually, roughly $20 million today. Prostitution, though less profitable than alcohol, prostitution provided steady income. The outfit controlled hundreds of brothels and streetwalkers. A typical brothel paid $50 to $100 weekly to the outfit for protection. With approximately 500 such establishments under outfit control, this generated $25,000 to $50,000 weekly, or approximately $1 to $2 million annually, $20 to $40 million in today's money. Protection rackets. Legitimate businesses paid for protection from the outfit itself, of course. Restaurants, shops, and manufacturers in Chicago paid $5 to $50 weekly depending on their size. With thousands of businesses under outfit protection, this generated substantial ongoing income. Total annual revenue by 1927, conservative estimates placed the Chicago outfit's annual revenue at approximately $105 million, roughly $2 billion in today's money. Al Capone personally took home an estimated $85 million per year, approximately $1.7 billion today. Capone didn't hide his wealth. He flaunted it. This was part of his public relations strategy. He wanted to be seen as a successful businessman, a modern-day Robin Hood who provided a service people wanted. In 1928, Capone purchased a palatial estate on Palm Island in Miami Beach for $40,000, approximately $750,000 today. He spent an additional $100,000 on renovations, nearly $2 million today. Installing a swimming pool, gatehouse, and state-of-the-art security. This became his winter retreat. His Chicago headquarters was the Lexington Hotel, where he occupied an entire floor. The rent was $1,500 per week, $30,000 weekly in today's money. The suite was lavishly furnished with imported furniture, crystal chandeliers, and bulletproof steel doors. Capone's personal wardrobe was legendary. He bought custom suits from Marshall Field's, Chicago's premier department store, spending $500 per suit, approximately $10,000 today. He owned dozens of suits and changed clothes 3 times daily. His silk shirts cost $50 each, $1,000 today, and he wore a new one each day. His jewelry collection included diamond belt buckles worth $5,000 each, diamond rings worth $20,000, and a platinum pocket watch encrusted with diamonds worth $11,000, that's $220,000 in today's money for a watch. Capone was also extraordinarily generous, particularly during the Great Depression. He opened soup kitchens in Chicago that served 3 meals daily to thousands of unemployed workers. These soup kitchens cost approximately $12,000 monthly to operate, $240,000 today. This wasn't pure altruism, it was brilliant public relations that earned him goodwill among Chicago's working class. By 1929, Capone's dominance of Chicago was nearly complete, but one major rival remained, George Bugs Moran and the North Side Gang. The conflict between these organizations had resulted in numerous deaths and was costing both sides money. On February 14, 1929, 7 members of Moran's gang were murdered in a garage on North Clark Street. The killers, dressed as police officers, lined the men against a wall and executed them with Thompson submachine guns. Though never convicted, Capone was widely believed to have ordered the hit. The massacre cost Capone approximately $50,000 to orchestrate, salaries for the hitmen, weapons, bribes, and logistics, nearly $1 million today. But it eliminated a major competitor, consolidating Capone's control and potentially increasing his revenue by millions annually. However, the brutality shocked even Chicago's jaded public and increased pressure from federal authorities. The massacre would prove to be a turning point, the beginning of the end for Capone's empire. Despite his immense wealth and power, Capone had a fatal weakness: taxes. He never filed income tax returns. In his mind, he was running a cash business in an illegal industry. Why would he report income to the government? President Herbert Hoover, facing public pressure to address Chicago's lawlessness, directed the Treasury Department to bring down Capone. A young agent named Elliot Ness led a team called the Untouchables, so named because they couldn't be bribed. They targeted Capone's breweries and supply chains, costing the outfit millions in destroyed inventory and lost revenue. But the real threat came from IRS agent Frank Wilson, who painstakingly traced Capone's financial transactions. Wilson discovered that while Capone never filed tax returns, he had made several large purchases in his own name: the Palm Island estate, expensive furniture, and jewelry. Wilson also found witnesses, including Capone's own bookkeeper, who could testify to his income. The math was devastating. For the years 1925 to 1929, Capone had earned approximately $215 million but had paid zero taxes. The IRS calculated he owed approximately $5 million in back taxes, roughly $100 million today, plus interest and penalties. In 1931, Capone was indicted on 22 counts of federal income tax evasion. He initially offered to pay the back taxes and penalties, approximately $4 million, in exchange for a light sentence. Federal prosecutors refused. They wanted Capone in prison. Capone's trial began on October 6, 1931, in federal court in Chicago. His defense team argued that the government couldn't prove his income since bootlegging records weren't documented. But prosecutor George E. Q. Johnson presented a devastating case built on financial evidence. The government showed that Capone spent approximately $165,000 on custom furniture for his Palm Island estate, tens of thousands on jewelry, and hundreds of thousands on clothing, entertainment, and gifts, all while claiming no taxable income. They presented testimony from merchants, hotel staff, and even Western Union, showing money transfers in Capone's name. The defense argued that much of this spending was on behalf of the organization, not personal income. But the prosecution countered that even if true, as the head of the organization, Capone had effective control and benefit of these funds, making it taxable income under federal law. After 9 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on 5 of 22 counts. On October 24, 1931, Judge James Wilkerson sentenced Capone to 11 years in federal prison, $50,000 in fines, and $30,000 in court costs, roughly $1.6 million today. The sentence shocked Capone, who expected at most 2 to 3 years. His empire, built on cash and violence, was destroyed by accounting. Capone initially served his sentence at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta, where he continued to live relatively comfortably, paying guards for special privileges. In 1934, he was transferred to the newly opened Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in San Francisco Bay, specifically designed to hold America's most dangerous criminals. At Alcatraz, Capone was inmate number 85. No special treatment, no bribes, no power. His health deteriorated rapidly. He suffered from untreated syphilis, which he had contracted years earlier, and the disease was now causing neurosyphilis, devastating his mental faculties. Meanwhile, his financial empire collapsed. Without his leadership, the Chicago outfit fragmented. Government seizures, legal fees, and tax liens consumed his wealth. The IRS seized the Palm Island estate, though Capone eventually negotiated to keep it by agreeing to pay taxes and debts. Capone was released in 1939 after serving 7 years, his health broken. He spent his final years at Palm Island, cared for by his wife and family. His mental state continued to deteriorate, and he suffered a stroke in 1947. On January 25, 1947, he died of cardiac arrest at age 48. At the time of his death, Al Capone's net worth was estimated at approximately $100,000, mostly the equity in the Palm Island estate. The man who once earned $85 million per year died nearly broke, his empire dismantled, his health destroyed, his legacy forever tied to violence and tax evasion. Capone's story is ultimately one of the greatest financial rises and falls in American criminal history. He built an empire worth billions in today's money, but his refusal to acknowledge the legitimacy of government authority, even to the point of paying taxes on illegal income, proved his downfall. The lesson? Even the most powerful criminal empire is vulnerable to the accountant's ledger. Al Capone, who once controlled Chicago, was brought down not by bullets, but by balance sheets. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Capone's financial empire, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Let me know in the comments what other criminal financial empires you'd like me to cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.